Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and it's the North Shore Drive podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers have beaten the Washington Commanders 28-27. We talk with Ray Fittipaldo, who's still in Maryland after covering that game. We're going to go over this game a little bit, talk about what we saw on offense, defense, and the big picture as the Steelers head into a big week. It's Ravens week, so we're going to talk about what they need to do heading into this week and what the big picture is for the AFC as the Steelers at 7-2 atop the AFC North. It's the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello, welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Ray Fittipaldo, one of our great Steelers beat writers. And as always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the daily content that comes from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. As always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Whether you're injured in a car accident or hurt on the job, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injury victims for over 40 years recover more than $2 billion on their behalf. If you or a loved one have been seriously injured in an accident, call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Ray, you're still in Maryland after covering a wild one. We're recording this Sunday evening during the Texans-Lions game. Let's take a step back and let's talk about this offense, because Russell Wilson has now come in. He's now thrown, 6 touchdown passes in 3 games, and that is one less than Kenny Pickett has thrown in his best year with the Steelers. And he has put himself in a position where he's now guiding an offense that's now scored over 30. It's averaging over 30 points per game, just barely in his first 3 appearances. But this was an offense that wasn't clicking the entire time, but he just finds ways to make it click at the right time. And that's what's just, I think, so remarkable is, all of a sudden, like, hey, they might have stuffed this run. They might have taken away this slant, but then you hit George Pickens 20 yards downfield, and it's like, well, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, I mean, if you compare and contrast this game against the Commanders and the game before the off week against the Giants, they went up and down the field against the Giants at over 400 yards of offense, but they went 0 for 4 in the red zone.
Yep.
And they were, they were settling for field goals. In this game, really, it was kind of the opposite. They were able to go 3 for 4 in the red zone. But when they weren't in the red zone, Chris, it kind of got ugly at times. Russell Wilson was only 14 for 28, completed 50% of his passes, 195 yards. So it wasn't a great day for the offense. I think that, if Mike Williams doesn't come down with that touchdown with 2:22 left on the clock, this is probably a different conversation that we're having. But I give Russ all the credit in the world. That's what great players do. You could be off for 3.5 quarters of a game, but if you hit one throw to help your team win, that's all that matters. And that's why Mike Tomlin went to him a month ago, and that's why the Steelers are sitting here at 7-2 going into Ravens week.
Agreed. I think it's a big reason why Russell Wilson is seeing the field. And Ray, I think there's something to be said about his ability to understand this is when I take my shot. This is when I give our team a chance. Because even in the interception he threw, it was 3rd down. The play had kind of broken down, and he threw it deep enough where it was either going to be a catch, or if it was intercepted, it was going to be a punt. And it was basically a punt, flipped the field, and it didn't crush the Steelers. But then, like, on all those big plays where we're talking about George Pickens down the sideline, George Pickens in the end zone, Mike Williams in the end zone, all those plays, he's making the right reads, and he's saying, hey, you know what? This is the one play where they're one-on-one, and I'm going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, you look at the stats from this game, Chris. The Steelers had 140 yards rushing. They ran the ball better in the 4th quarter, but their average yards per rush was just 3.3. So I didn't view that as a very efficient day running the football, at least until not late. And listen, I'm not going to underplay what happened late in that football game. They kind of dictated that 4th quarter. Really, the last quarter and a half, they kind of had their way with the Commanders. This offense continues to impress me since Russell Wilson took over. Are there things we can probably sit here and nitpick? Yeah, Pat Freiermuth wasn't involved again. Najee Harris didn't have a great day. But listen, Chris, they found a way to win. They're still atop the AFC North, and it's going to be a fun week looking ahead to the Ravens Sunday at Acrisure.
It is. I want to go back to one point in the game, or 2 points in the game rather, that I thought showed the balance that Russell Wilson brings as a quarterback. There was that third down where he checked it down to Jaylen Warren, and he gets a big chunk of yards, and it sets up their first touchdown drive. That to me was like a big example of like when a blitz is brought by the Commanders, and he just has to find an open guy, and he makes the right read, and it leads to big yards. That was a solid play. But then on Mike Williams' touchdown, it was a very similar blitz call where the Commanders tried to send the house on him. He knew he was on a short clock to get the ball out of his hands. And this time, when Jaylen Warren comes out of the flat, the safety flies up to try to cover him, and that leaves Mike Williams in one-on-one. That's when he knew, hey, I got my guy one-on-one, and he throws it there. It's those types of moments where Russell Wilson, like, it seems so simple. It seems so quick because it is so quick. But it's the preparation that goes into know, hey, I have this look and I have that look. And if they go this way, I go that way. If they go that way, I go this way. And to understand how he does that, I think is truly impressive. And that is a big key. That's all the Steelers have been asking for. They're not asking for you to throw it between triple coverage. They're not asking you to be prime Patrick Mahomes, launching it and hitting ridiculous angles. They're saying, hey, when the defense is giving you something, attack the thing that they're leaving vulnerable, and he's doing that very consistently.
Yeah, I mean, how about Russ going to the well again on a deep ball? He was off on the deep ball all day. Van Jefferson had a shot at one. It really wasn't competitive. Calvin Austin, I think, had a shot at maybe 2 deep balls, but they weren't really on the same page. The ball was landing, 5 yards to their left, and they were looking to the right. It was just kind of an off day for the deep passing game. We talked to Mike Williams in the locker room, and I'd be surprised, Chris, if he played, 5 or 10 snaps in this football game. And when he was on the sidelines watching, he was looking at Russ Wilson's deep ball, and he saw how much air Russ puts on that deep ball. So Mike Williams told us, hey, listen, if I get in the game and I get an opportunity, I am not going to look back at Russ. I'm going to look at the sky for the football. It's exactly what he did. Made a nice adjustment on that ball. Great pass, too.
Yeah.
That was a nice adjustment that Williams made on that ball, and boom, game over.
Absolutely. Ray, we've talked a lot about this offense and what it could be. We've now seen 3 whole games, 3 whole starts of what it could be with Russell Wilson. And in those starts, they're averaging over 30 points per game. Do you think we are seeing the real Steelers offense right now, or do you think it's gonna, if by the end of the season it's gonna regress, or could it get better?
Yeah, man, I think it can get better, Chris. I think you add a guy like Mike Williams, I think that relationship with Russ is only going to improve. The running backs are getting healthier. Cordero Patterson came back today. I thought maybe they forced Patterson a little bit too much coming off a month layoff, and he was out there early and often. So, we'll get that situated. But, I think there's more that this offense can do. I like the ability to score in the red zone today. We all know they were near the bottom of the league entering this game. If they can continue to do well in the red zone, the way they've been able to move the ball in most games under Russ, then that would spell an opportunity to continue to score a lot of points. And listen, they're going to need him next week against the Ravens, Chris. I mean, the Ravens, you're not going to shut that team down. That's the best offense in football. I think people know that. So, we're probably going to have to see a repeat performance from Russ in that offense if they're going to beat the Ravens at Acrisure.
I agree. It's going to take a serious effort there, but the defense also needs to show up. The defense showed up in weird ways in this one, like the offense. They weren't completely dominant, but they were good, and they made plays at the right times. We'll talk about what was good and what wasn't good from the Steelers defense right here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, Remind you, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. If you're injured in an accident, you're probably wondering what's next. Well, for over 40 years, Edgar Snyder Associates have helped injury victims answer the question, what's next? Whether it's gathering evidence, collecting medical records, or dealing with insurance companies, Edgar Snyder Associates have helped over 75,000 people handle the what's next question. Call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, let's talk about this defense. The defense gives up 27 points in this game. They do defend the field. One thing I was impressed by was how they were able to really hang on in the fourth quarter, which had to happen if the Steelers were going to win this game. But if you look at their possessions that they got in the fourth quarter, Washington was in some pretty good spots to make something happen, and the Steelers ended the game forcing a punt on 4 plays, a 3-and-out punt on 3 plays, and then getting that turnover downs at the end of the game. They shut it down in the fourth quarter. What about this defense did you see adjust or get better as the game went on? Yeah,
big plays at opportune moments. I'm sure people are going to be talking about that special teams fake punt that James Pierre dropped the ball on.
Oh, yeah.
James Pierre was pressed into playing time today because Dante Jackson left with a hamstring injury. You could tell Jayden Daniels and that coaching staff of Washington was targeting him late in the game. He had a huge pass breakup. I think it was on 3rd down, Chris.
He did,
yes. Maybe second down on that last drive that helped them win that football game. Mm-hmm. The play before, Washington called a quarterback draw. Jayden Daniels looked like he had a lot of running room. Keanu Benton gets off his block. He tackles him for a 1-yard gain. I mean, that's a huge football player. They returned that kickoff to near midfield. They only needed, 15, 20 yards for a game-winning field goal.
Right.
And Benton steps up and makes a play like that. So, yeah, I mean, listen, we're going to get into all the penalties and what Terry McLaurin did to this defense. But when that defense needed to bow up, they bowed up. And that was impressive what happened in the final, I'd say 7-8 minutes of that football game.
Patrick Queen had been a target for a lot of ire for Steelers fans for a few weeks because he wasn't making splash plays. He wasn't making big plays, and you saw him not there. But this week, he leads the Steelers with 7 tackles. 2 of those were tackles for loss. Also broke a 3rd down pass. What did you see from Patrick Queen and Landon Roberts at the linebacker position in this game?
Yeah, attacking. Two tackles for loss for Patrick Queen. I thought they did a really nice job of reading some of those running plays that the Commanders dialed up there. And, listen, the Steelers came out in base. For a lot of the game, the Commanders wanted to stay. They wanted that matchup with Roberts on the football field. They didn't necessarily want to get the Steelers into their nickel or dime. So they wouldn't change personnel. They would go hurry up at the line, and that forced Landon Roberts to play a lot of the game. I didn't think it hurt the Steelers. He had 5 tackles. You didn't see any mismatches in coverage, which is what you worried about when Roberts has to be out there in certain situations. So, I thought the inside linebacker play was really good. Quiet game for the outside guys.
Yeah.
Both Watt and Highsmith were playing super wide 9. They had a tight end, or they had sometimes Eckler would be split out there, and there was just all kinds of traffic there. So, this is a game where the interior pass rush had to show up. Cam Heyward had 2 sacks. I thought he did a good job at times pushing that pocket back. So, when you have a really good defense, Chris, it's not going to be the T.J. Watt show every single week. It's not going to be Alex Highsmith show every single week. They're going to get the splash plays. They're going to get all the attention. But some games, other guys need to step up, and this was a day for Patrick Queen, for Cam Heyward. I thought Deshaun Elliott played another really good game. DeMonte KZ was in on that 4th down stop of Earth late in that game. So, you had some of the role players stepping up and making plays to help them win that game today.
I agree, and that's what this defense needed. Was they needed role players to piece together their stars, because T.J. Watt, star; Cam Heyward, star; Minkah Fitzpatrick, star. Though he hasn't been making star plays, he's been a big puzzle piece for the Steelers, and that's where this defense needed those guys to come in. Real quick, Alex Highsmith got hurt in this game. I think Steelers fans in general just all took a really deep breath when that happened, because people, how good he's been for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Is this an injury that looks like it could end up be costing him the season, or could he be back in a bit of time? What's the sense that you have on Alex Highsmith?
Well, it looked really bad. He took off his helmet right away, threw his helmet, and he wasn't putting any pressure on that foot as he left the field. Now, his dad tweeted something about an hour or so after the game, thanking people for their prayers. And he basically said they'll know more Monday or Tuesday about that injury. Looks like a high ankle sprain, maybe a broken ankle. If it's a high sprain, it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks, Chris. So the acquisition of Preston Smith looks like it's going to be a good one. I thought he showed up today too, right?
He did.
Had that sack and that big tackle for a loss there. So that was definitely something that Omar Khan was looking to shore up, and I thought that was some good play by Smith there in the second half when they needed him.
No, it certainly was. I thought that they did need him, because it certainly was going to be a bigger question if they didn't get those big plays there. I looked at how the Steelers defense came into this game, and this is against one of the better offenses, and they needed someone to come in and give a spark. Preston Smith doing that off the edge, gives you a chance where, hey, if Nick Herbig's healthy next week, now you can have that three-man rotation. But again, it's about having all those puzzle pieces in your defense, and you don't need to have 3 turnovers a week to do it. It certainly helps to get turnovers, but this team won basically without, outside of them getting that muffed punt. This defense didn't force a turnover in this game, and yet I think they still had a decent game on defense. They held what was the number 3 rushing offense with that averaged 169 yards per game. They held them to 60 yards. I mean, so they did what they were supposed to do there. They were very dominant in that part of the game, and that's the thing I look about this Steelers defense, is that they're going to work to take away 1 or 2 things and force you to win a different way. And this time it worked out. The other team wasn't going to figure it out fast enough.
Yeah, Chris, you go on the road, you lose the turnover battle, and you give up a big play to Terry McLaurin at a really bad time. I mean, they go up 10 early in the second half. Things were not looking good, but that defense played well when they had to play well, and they're going to feel good about themselves going into that Ravens game. We should point out the Ravens are an offensive juggernaut, but the Steelers always seem to play well against Lamar Jackson. So I'm sure we'll talk about that later in the week.
I'm sure we will. But let's, real quick before we move to a bigger picture look here, Joey Porter Jr. looked like he struggled in this game. Had multiple penalties called against him. Got beat for a couple of those Terry McLaurin plays. What's your read on where Joey Porter Jr. is as a player? Is he being blamed for things that aren't as much his fault? Is he in a position where he's playing poorly, or is he playing well? What's your read on Joey Porter?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes you have to sort of read the room. If you're a defensive back, if you're in a game where the referees are calling it close, you have to adjust. Yeah. And I don't think Joey did a very good job of adjusting in this game. I do give Porter credit for one thing. He always wants that matchup against the other team's top receiver. It didn't go well for him today. McLaurin made some plays. McLaurin let him know about it. So there's no 2 ways about it. It was a bad game for Porter, but I think what he's shown over the first 1.5 years of his career, he's got the ability to bounce back, and I think he will bounce back against the Ravens. Tough matchup again. Zay Flowers, excellent player. I mean, he's that smaller, shiftier guy. I don't know that Terrell Austin and Mike Tomer can give him that assignment, play in and play out, but that's a very talented offense with a lot of weapons that I'm sure Porter and the rest of the secondary will be tested next Sunday at Acrisure.
And we'll talk about that outlook, because we got to take a step back and look at, well, the Steelers are 7-2. Let's reassess where they actually are and what they could actually do with this record the rest of the way here as they pick up their AFC North games. We'll get into all of that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They are mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them now for a free consultation. That's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. We're also brought to you by Moon Township Honda, where you can get your new Honda vehicle today at 5802 University Boulevard, Moon Township, or on their website, moonhonda.com. Here is a message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
To build the Honda CR-V Hybrid, we took everything you love about the CR-V and kicked it up a notch with greater power for a CR-V unlike any before. Adventure confidently with Honda, car and driver's most awarded brand in 10 best history. The CR-V and CR-V Hybrid, part of the Honda line of rugged vehicles. Visit your local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily. Buy online or reserve from select Honda dealers.
Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. All right, Ray, let's take a step back. The Steelers right now are 7-2. They are just ahead of the Ravens by half a game, who are sit at 7-3. The two are to clash this upcoming Sunday in Pittsburgh. But what do you like about the Steelers' position right now? Because if the playoffs were to start today, they'd be in and they'd be pretty high up. Though technically the Bills would have the edge on them because they have a half game on them at 8-2 and they haven't had their bye week. The Steelers, even with that, are the 3 seed and would host, if the playoffs were to start today, I believe they would host the Baltimore Ravens. They would host, the Chargers in that situation. So where do you think the Steelers truly stand in the AFC North as far as assessing what they got to go through?
Yeah, they've done a really nice job to put themselves in a really excellent position going down the home stretch here in November, December, and January. After that game was over and after all the other results in the AFC today, the Steelers have a 94% chance of making the playoffs.
Crazy.
According to the New York Times postseason simulator. Now, I will caution Chris, fans out there who remember 2018, they were 7-2-1, and somehow they missed out on the postseason that year. So anything could happen, but this does look very much like a playoff team. And I think at this point, they're playing for the AFC North title and they're playing for playoff seeding. You could finish anywhere right now, I would think, between a 2 and probably a 6 or a 7 seed. I don't know if they can fall all the way to a 7 seed. They have to have a pretty bad second half for that to happen. But to me, the second half is all about winning the North, trying to get that 2 or 3 seed and putting yourself in as best position as possible to make a little run once you get to the postseason.
And let's look at the AFC North real quick here to see how things out. They're 7-2 at the top of the division. They haven't played a division game. Everyone else has at least played 2. The Ravens right behind them at 7-3, a half game off. And then after them, the Bengals 4-6, who lost to the Ravens on Thursday Night Football this past week, and then the Browns at 2-7, who are just finishing up their bye week here. Ray, it feels like it should be the chalk answer that the Ravens are the Steelers, primary concern moving forward. Yeah. But do you think that the Bengals might be a team that could make a run and be one of those teams that maybe pushes the Steelers late in the season, or do you think that that's kind of run its course at their 4-6 record?
I don't think the Cincinnati Bengals can win the AFC North, but I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Steelers, or the Bills. I don't want to see Joe Burrow in the playoffs. So if I were all of those teams up in the top 4 seeds right now, I would be rooting against the Bengals for the rest of the season. They got a big game coming up next Sunday night at the Chargers. Their schedule does get a bit easier after that, so that's going to be a big game for the Bengals. But they've put themselves in such a tough position, Chris. I don't really see any way that they can win the North, but I still think they're going to be a factor in the AFC when it comes to the wild card.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line, is if they're a factor and if they're like the leading factor, instead of needing to depend on other people, they could be the team that people depend upon to either seal other teams out or to be, the team that everyone's like, oh, we got to find a way to see if the Steelers can get out of this playoff picture here. But they're in the driver's seat, right? That's my thing. They have put themselves in a position where they control their own destiny at this point. And I think that's a very good place to be if you're the Steelers, considering the things that they've gone through in recent years. And if we're looking at things now, and again, we're recording this during the Texans-Lions game. As it stands right now, the Texans are up 23-13 on the Lions, and CJ Stroud just threw an interception. Interesting. But point being, there's a lot of talented teams in the AFC. But where do you put if you're to put the Steelers on a tier? I think clearly the Chiefs are on their own. They're 9-0. They don't lose. Are the Steelers that next tier, or is there are they another tier even below that?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the halfway point of the season. I don't know. Some people might make a separate tier just for the Bills. I don't know if I would do that. I think the Bills, Steelers, and the Ravens are all kind of in that second tier. We could probably add the Texans to that as well. I think D'Amico Ryans is a really good coach. I know they've had some injuries. They're going to miss Diggs the rest of the season. Nico Collins has been banged up for a lot of the year, so I would expect that offense to get much better. So I think it's the Chiefs. Then you got that next four, and then you got all those teams like the Chargers, the Bengals, the Broncos vying for that. Those three wild card positions. So I think, if we had to look at it right now, I'd say three tiers, and I think the Steelers are squarely one of the better teams in tier 2.
There you go, right there. So the Steelers are one step away from the Chiefs there. As far as the other two competition, the AFC, how will they get there? It all starts by beating the Ravens next Sunday, 1 p.m. at Acrisure Stadium. We'll have you covered all week long, getting you ready for that big matchup here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Ray, thanks for joining me here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you all for joining us here on the North Shore Drive podcast. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this episode to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. From Chris Carter and Ray Fittipaldo, have a happy Monday, Pittsburgh. We'll see you again here Tuesday for the post-Mike Tomlin press conference. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.